Robert, you've played in many of these NBA All-Star games. What do you remember most about playing in an NBA All-Star game?
I remember the competition, how competitive it was, from jump ball to the ending, and also what a privilege and an honor it was to be selected to play in the All-Star game. Never complained, especially as I referenced earlier, he went through some very lean times. Never complained. It's when I did his job every night and led by example, and I always appreciated that because that's how I tried to play the game.
Robert Parish just dropped his list of the 7 greatest centers of all time. And right there at the top, he put the words every basketball fan argues about. He is my GOAT. Coming from a man who played more NBA games than anyone in history, who battled every legend from the 1970s through the 1990s, you'd think his rankings would be bulletproof. But here's the thing, this list doesn't just honor greatness, it exposes bias. It reveals how much personal experience can cloud judgment, and it raises a question that should make you uncomfortable. Can the guy who lived it really see it clearly? Parish calls this his definitive hierarchy of centers. What it actually is, though, is a time capsule of one man's wars in the paint, dressed up as objective history. And while his credentials demand respect, his choices demand scrutiny. Let's start with what makes Robert Parish qualified to even have this conversation. The Chief played 21 seasons. He logged over 1,600 games. He won 4 championships. He ran the floor with Larry Bird, defended Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the finals, and got punched in the ribs by Moses Malone for over a decade. Parish didn't just watch basketball history, he bled through it. His perspective isn't theoretical, it's tactical. When he talks about these centers, he's not pulling from highlight reels or advanced metrics. He's pulling from the bruises, from the exhaustion, from the nights where guarding someone felt like moving a mountain with your bare hands. That lived experience gives his opinion weight, but it also gives it blind spots. And those blind spots are all over this list. Before we go further, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment below. Tell me this, does Moses Malone really belong at number 2 on any all-time center list? Because that's where Parish put him, right behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and ahead of everyone else. Ahead of Hakeem, ahead of Wilt, ahead of Shaq. That placement alone should tell you everything you need to know about how Parish built this list. It's not about who was the best, it's about who made him work the hardest. Parish's philosophy is built on 3 pillars: longevity, toughness, team success. He values the guy who shows up every night, grinds through contact, and wins championships. That's why his list is loaded with players who lasted forever and racked up rings. Kareem played 20 seasons. Parish played 21. Moses was relentless. Hakeem was versatile. Russell won 11 titles. Wilt and Shaq dominated physically. Jokic just won a championship and never misses games. Every single name on this list checks the boxes Parish cares about. But here's the problem with that criteria. It punishes peak dominance. It punishes players who burned bright but couldn't sustain it due to injury or circumstance. And it elevates the players Parish personally feared over the players history should fear most. Parish's placement of Moses Malone at number 2 isn't just controversial. It's a statement. It's Parish telling the world that modern fans don't understand what made a center truly great. That they're blinded by highlights and narratives and marketing machines. That they never felt Moses crash into them possession after possession. Never tried to box him out for 48 minutes straight. Never experienced the pure exhaustion of matching his motor. Moses wasn't the most skilled. He wasn't the most athletic. But he was the most relentless. And to Parish, that relentlessness matters more than anything else. That's the lesson here. Let's talk about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at number 1. No controversy here. Kareem is the most logical choice for the greatest center ever. The skyhook was unstoppable. His longevity was unmatched. He won 6 MVPs and 6 championships. Parish defended him in multiple finals and came away knowing one thing. You can't stop that shot. You can only hope he misses. Parish respects Kareem because Kareem represents everything Parish values. Discipline, consistency, technical mastery. Kareem played at an elite level into his late 30s. Parish did the same. They're brothers in the war against time. Kareem at number 1 makes sense. It's the safest, smartest, most defensible pick on the entire list. But it's also the least interesting, because after Kareem, things get messy. Moses Malone at number 2. Let's sit with that for a second. Moses Malone, the man who averaged 20 and 12 for his career, who won 3 MVPs, who dragged a mediocre Rockets team to the finals in 1981 and swept the Lakers with the Sixers in 1983. Moses was a force. No one's denying that. But number 2, ahead of Hakeem Olajuwon, ahead of Wilt Chamberlain, ahead of Shaquille O'Neal, Parish justifies this by saying Moses was relentless, that he was a nightmare to guard, that his offensive rebounding and motor wore defenders down until they broke. And all of that is true, but it's also personal. Parish faced Moses constantly. The 1981 finals, countless regular season battles. Moses made Parish's life hell. So in Parish's mind, Moses is the ultimate warrior. But here's the question. Is Moses Malone really the second greatest center of all time? Or is he just the second hardest center Robert Parish ever had to guard? Because those are two very different things. The modern fan doesn't rank Moses this high. He's often left out of top 10 lists entirely. His offensive game wasn't refined. He didn't have the footwork of Hakeem or the dominance of Shaq. He just worked. He missed shots on purpose to create more rebounding opportunities. He out-hustled everyone. And Parish respects that because Parish values effort and availability. But effort isn't the same as greatness. Moses was great, but was he greater than Hakeem? Greater than Wilt? The answer, objectively, is no. But Parish isn't being objective. He's being experiential. And that's the flaw in this entire list. Hakeem Olajuwon comes in at number 3. Now we're talking. Hakeem is the most complete center ever. He could score in the post with footwork that defied physics. He could defend the perimeter. He could block shots and steal passes. He won back-to-back championships as the undisputed best player on his team. Michael Jordan once said if he had to pick one center for an all-time team, it would be Hakeem. Parish agrees. He calls Hakeem the evolution of the position, the bridge between raw power and refined skill. And that's accurate. Hakeem could play in any era, the 1960s, the 1980s, the 2020s. He was that versatile. But if Hakeem is that complete, why isn't he higher? Why is he behind Moses Malone? Parish would say it's because Moses was tougher, more relentless. But that's nostalgia talking. That's bias. Hakeem was better than Moses. And if this list was truly about greatness, Hakeem would be second, not third. Then we get to Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell, the founding fathers of the center position. Parish lists them back to back, which makes sense given their rivalry defined an entire era. But here's where things get really interesting. Wilt and Russell are both ranked after Kareem, Moses, and Hakeem. Why? Because Parish didn't play against them. He saw them. He studied them, but he didn't feel them. Wilt retired in 1973, Russell in 1969. Parish entered the league in 1976. He missed them by a few years. So while he respects their legacies, he doesn't fear them the way he fears the guys he actually battled. And that's the key insight here. Parish rates the players he played against higher than the players he only heard about. It's the I felt it versus I heard about it bias. And it completely warps the list. Bill Russell won 11 championships. He's the greatest winner in basketball history. He invented the block shot as a defensive weapon. He was the ultimate team player. Parish played for the Celtics. Russell was his mentor, the standard Parish chased. But Russell was a defensive specialist. He couldn't score like Kareem or Hakeem. He didn't have the raw power of Wilt or Shaq. So Parish ranks him 5th, behind the guys who could do it all. And that's fair to a degree, but it also shows that Parish values two-way dominance over pure winning, which is interesting because Parish himself was a two-way player who sacrificed stats to win. You'd think he'd rank Russell higher, but he doesn't, because even Parish, the ultimate team guy, can't ignore the fact that offense is what separates legends. Wilt Chamberlain, the most physically dominant player ever, 100 points in a game, 50 rebounds in a game, averaged 48.5 minutes per game for an entire season. Wilt is the prototype, the superhero, the guy who bent reality with sheer size and strength. Parish respects that, but he ranks Wilt 4th. Why? Because Wilt didn't win as much as Russell. Because Wilt's peak, as insane as it was, came in an era Parish only knows through stories. And because Parish values consistency over peak, Wilt had the highest peak ever. But Kareem, Moses, and Hakeem sustained their dominance longer, at least in Parish's eyes. And again, that's bias. That's Parish prioritizing his own values over historical consensus. Wilt should be higher, but he's not, because Parish is human, and humans are biased. Shaquille O'Neal comes in at number 6. This one stings. Shaq at his peak was arguably the most unstoppable force the game has ever seen. From 2000 to 2002, Shaq was untouchable. He won 3 straight championships. He dominated the finals. He forced teams to change their entire rosters just to have 6 fouls to give. Parish played against a young Shaq in the early 1990s. He saw the raw power, the athleticism, the destruction. So why is Shaq 6th? Why is he behind Moses and Hakeem and Wilt? Because Parish didn't respect Shaq's conditioning. Shaq played himself into shape. He missed games. He didn't have the discipline of Kareem or the motor of Moses. And for a guy like Parish, who kept himself in perfect shape until age 43, that's unforgivable. Shaq could have been number 1, but he didn't work hard enough. At least, not in Parish's eyes. So he's 6th. And that's a problem, because Shaq's peak was higher than Moses Malone's entire career. But Parish doesn't care about peaks. He cares about marathons. And that's why this list feels wrong. Finally, we get to Nikola Jokic, the modern wildcard, the European who rewrote the playbook. Jokic is the most surprising inclusion on this list, and it's also the most revealing. Parish is an old-school guy, born in Louisiana in the 1950s, played in the 1980s when the game was physical and unforgiving. You'd expect him to dismiss Jokic as soft, as a product of a watered-down era, but he doesn't. He includes him, and not just as a token gesture. Parish genuinely respects Jokic. Why? Because Jokic reminds him of Larry Bird, the high release point, the court vision, the ability to dominate without being the most athletic guy on the floor. Parish won championships catching passes from Bird. He knows the value of a big man who can facilitate. Jokic is the greatest passing center ever. He won a championship in 2023. He plays every game. He's durable. He's skilled. He's smart. Parish sees all of that and recognizes greatness. But even here, there's bias. Jokic is ranked 7th, dead last, behind Shaq, behind Wilt, behind everyone. Why? Because Jokic hasn't done it long enough. He's only got 1 ring. His defense is questionable. And while Parish respects the evolution, he's not ready to put a modern player above the legends he battled. Not yet. Maybe not ever. So what does this list really tell us? It tells us that Robert Parish values the players who made him suffer, the ones who forced him to dig deep, the ones who tested his body and his will. Kareem with the skyhook, Moses with the relentless rebounding, Hakeem with the footwork. Those are the guys who earned Parish's respect through violence and exhaustion. And that's
understandable. But it also means this list isn't about who the greatest centers are. It's about who the greatest centers were to Robert Parish. And those are 2 very different conversations. Here's the second call to action. Comment below with your all-time center list. Is Parish's era-based logic still valid today? Or does the modern game demand a different standard? Because that's the real debate here. Parish judges these centers based on durability, toughness, and rings. But is that still the right way to evaluate greatness? Or has the game evolved past that? Jokic is dominating with passing and shooting. Players are load managing. The game is faster and more skilled. Does longevity still matter as much as it did in Parish's day? Or are we in a new era where peak performance trumps everything? Let me know what you think, because this conversation isn't over. It's just getting started. Let's talk about the players who didn't make this list. Patrick Ewing, David Robinson, Dwight Howard. All legitimate Hall of Famers. All champions or near champions, but none of them are here. Why? Because they don't fit Parish's criteria. Ewing never won a ring. Robinson was great, but didn't have the killer instinct of Hakeem. Dwight had the peak, but not the longevity or the skill refinement. Parish's list is a championship list. Every single player on it won at least 1 title. That's non-negotiable. If you didn't win, you don't belong in Parish's top tier. And that makes sense for a guy who won 4 rings. But it also shows how narrow his definition of greatness is, because plenty of all-time greats never won, and they're still all-time greats. But not to Parish. To him, winning is everything. And if you didn't win, you weren't great enough. The implied hierarchy of this list is fascinating. Parish claims there's no strict order, but the vertical presentation tells a different story. Kareem and Moses at the top, the guys Parish battled directly. Hakeem as the bridge to the modern game. Wilt and Russell as the historical pillars. Shaq and Jokic as the successors. This isn't random. This is a psychological map of Parish's career. The top of the list is his era, the golden age of the 1980s, the guys he went to war with. The middle is the history he respects. The bottom is the future he acknowledges. It's a timeline of basketball greatness filtered through one man's life. And that's beautiful, but it's also limiting, because it means this list says more about Robert Parish than it does about the centers he's ranking. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Parish's list is biased. It's biased toward his contemporaries. It's biased toward players who matched his values. It's biased toward physical toughness over skill refinement, even though Parish himself claims the position evolved toward skill. It's biased toward the battles he lived through, rather than the history he studied. And that's okay, because bias is human. But it also means we can't take this list as gospel. We can respect it, we can learn from it, but we can't accept it as the final word. Because the final word on greatness doesn't exist. It can't exist. Greatness is subjective. It's personal. It's shaped by experience and values and the era you lived through. And Robert Parish's greatness is shaped by the 1980s, by the physicality, by the grind, by the wars in the paint that left scars. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a list that's deeply flawed, but deeply fascinating. A list that tells us Moses Malone deserves more respect than he gets, that Hakeem Olajuwon is the perfect center, that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is untouchable, that Wilt and Russell are immortal, that Shaq could have been better, and that Nikola Jokic is carrying the torch into the future. But it also tells us that even legends can't escape their own biases, that even the guys who lived it can't see it perfectly, and that the debate over who's the greatest will never end. Because everyone's GOAT is different, and Robert Parish's GOAT is shaped by the battles he fought, the pain he endured, and the championships he won. At the end of the day, you have to respect Robert Parish. The Chief earned his voice. He earned his platform. He played longer than anyone. He won more than most. He battled the best and survived to tell the tale. His list isn't perfect, but it's honest. It's personal. It's his truth. And in a world full of hot takes and clickbait rankings, there's something valuable about a list that comes from lived experience, even if that experience clouds judgment, even if that judgment feels wrong. Because Robert Parish's list isn't trying to be objective. It's trying to honor the men he went to war with. And in that sense, it succeeds. Moses Malone is number 2 because he earned Parish's fear. Hakeem is 3rd because he earned Parish's admiration. Shaq is 6th because he didn't earn Parish's full respect. And Jokic is 7th because he's still earning it. This isn't a list of the greatest centers. It's a list of Robert Parish's greatest battles. And maybe that's exactly what it should be.